Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Sports on the Positive Tip, where we have conversations at the intersection of sports and faith. I am joined by Kenny Squared, and I had to check on him a lot this week to just make sure that there was a wellness check, that he was still that he had a pulse, that he was still doing good. So Kenny, one of the roughest weeks I can remember in a long time for you. You okay?
Yeah, did I not call this last week? It's
You did.
ridiculous.
Yeah. You did. We'll get into Saquon. We'll get into Garrett Cole. I was hoping that you did watch. I'm sensing that you probably didn't. Episode 4, at least, of the Patriots dynasty.
No, but I need to.
All right, I thought that would be a nice pick me up for you. I'll talk about it just a little bit without giving away. And we had breaking news before we jumped on here, man, that Aaron Donald has retired. Hall of Fame. He's 32 years old.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Probably like a top five defensive end of all time, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And I have to tell you, man, I am so anxious to run out to the polls and vote for Aaron Rodgers as VP. No doubt.
Yeah, I mean, he might not be available week 7 there or whatever would be the NFL.
You can't make it up, though, man. I'm hoping that he's concentrating on football. That he's getting ready for the season. You ready to get into this?
Let's go.
All right. This episode of Sports on the Positive Tip is brought to you by the Tavern Coffee House. Attention, coffee lovers. Are you craving the perfect cup of coffee to start your day? Well, look no further than the Tavern Coffee House. It's located at 12302 Buckeye Road in Cleveland, Ohio. You can also check them out and order your coffee at thetaverncoffee.com. Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny Squared.
the Sports on a Positive Tip podcast. Kenny, I'm going to pick up where we left off in the opening there. It was a tough week. I really first want to jump into the NFL, and we could talk about free agency. But, I mean, Saquon Barkley, yes, you were preparing that he was going to go. He goes right away to the Eagles of all teams. Your thoughts and put Barkley's career, giant career, in perspective for us.
Yeah, well, I mean, you said it perfectly. Like, I kind of figured he was gone after they didn't franchise tag him. And to me, that's fine. And also, like, I hate that he went to the Eagles, but the Eagles is a better fit for him right now than the Giants are.
Yeah.
The Giants have like 800 questions at quarterback. Like, um, they're saying that they're really still trying to get JJ McCarthy in the draft. But then they signed Drew Lock, and they say Drew Lock might compete for QB1 this year. So I have no idea what they're doing. And if you want to go to a different franchise, go for it. But why did you have to? Why did you have to go to the Eagles though? It's just. But like Saquon's career as a Giant, he did 6 years. When he was healthy, I think he was a top 5 running back in the league.
Oh, yeah.
And I think they'll definitely miss him next year. Because like, I mean, Singletary's pretty good, and I think they did a good job so far in free agency and upgrading, but they're definitely going to miss him because I think he was their best player, like offensively, and I think that they're really going to miss that aspect.
Yeah. I think if he hadn't gotten injured, man, he was on his way. Those first couple of years when he was healthy, he was just unstoppable. Um, I thought that he meant more to the Giants so than just on the field. You know, he was really quite a role model for for the team. Really conducted himself in a great way, and I think they're going to miss some of the intangibles that he brings to the table. How about Zach McKinney? Any thoughts on him? I thought he second or third best defensive player on the Giants. But I was surprised that they didn't really work hard to keep him.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems kind of weird. Um, like I feel like they probably should have made a little bit more of an effort, but maybe they're also looking at like what it would have cost long term and hoping to kind of rebuild in the draft. Also, it kind of seems like the star secondary has kind of gone away a little bit. Like, not fully, but like, I think of a few years ago when it was important to have a Darrell Revis or
Yeah.
a Richard Sherman, um, or even a Jalen Ramsey to some
Yeah.
extent. But
Yeah.
I feel like it's not as emphasized. I mean, you look at the Chiefs, their secondary wasn't spectacular. It was good, but like they're known more for the Chris Joneses of the world. So
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Maybe that's what they're kind of maybe their
Could
thought
be.
process.
You know, and to back that point up, I mean, you bring up the Chiefs. I think Snead moved on, and then the Bills cut two of their excellent secondary guys. Um, and so, you know, this is the part though I don't like about football. I like the free agency stuff, but I don't like that. Even though they increase the salary cap, it just seems to me in football, it's been like this for a long time now, that salary cap, you just it's hard for you to keep your best players, you know, and it's somewhere along the line, every team, you know, lets one of their better players walk. Um, and it's hard. Whereas that, you know, in baseball, where you don't have a salary cap, um, you know, you could offer Saquon Barkley, let's say, or Pete Alonso, probably put it in better perspective, a huge contract, right? That's not going to affect salary cap. You have the sales tax though, which is impacting, I think, both the Mets and Yankees, probably the Yankees a little bit more. We'll get to that in just a few. But I just I don't know. I've been a little bit puzzled by some of the Giants moves. Like I don't know if the Giants are in full rebuild mode now, or what are they trying to do, Ken?
I don't know. I'm really confused by it too.
Yeah.
Because like usually you can kind of tell based on how they're dealing with a quarterback. Like, take the Steelers, for example. You're kind of going a little bit all in on Russell Wilson this year and going to kind of see what you have. Now, there also is the chance that you still go with Kenny Pickens and like you keep going in this trajectory. But also, like, you kind of have a general idea of like they're not in a full blown rebuild because otherwise they try to trade up for a quarterback. But like the Giants are kind of trying to do the same thing, like a bunch of different things at the same time. Like Drew Lock, I think he's a great backup quarterback. If that's the case, why are you saying he has a chance to be the starting quarterback? You're
Yeah.
paying Daniel Jones big money next year, like this upcoming season, regardless of whether or not he's fully healthy or anything like that. Like you're not going to take that big dead cap hit.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
are you committing to him long term? But then also like you're looking at drafting a quarterback, which I think, if you ask me, that should be the play. Like draft a quarterback, have Daniel Jones for a year, have JJ McCarthy or whoever you really want to kind of learn under him for a year. Although I don't know how much you're going to learn from Daniel Jones, but he does have a playoff win. So,
Yeah.
like I think that should be the process. But the Drew Lock thing kind of has thrown me off. I don't really know what
Yeah.
they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, Daniel Jones, I mean, I think that at this point in his career, right, that there's a guy that's begging, I think. He's not begging himself, but if there's ever a player that I recognize, and you probably recognize, that needs a fresh start somewhere else, I think it's him. And I think he'd probably go somewhere and do extremely well. You know, I just, because he definitely has the talent. He still has a very big arm. He could still run. You know, he gets out of the pocket nicely. There's a lot to like about Daniel Jones, you know. I think the consistency for me has been off for him, you know what I mean? But I just, it's hard to pinpoint what the Giants did, and how it's helping them and what their direction is. And I'm not sure, like you said, I don't even know if they know. Um, you know, around the NFL, well, let's stop there in Cleveland for a second, because the Browns picked up Jameis Winston, and then Joe Flacco signed with the Colts, I want to say, yes.
Yep.
What was everybody surprised about? I figured if Joe Flacco wasn't coming back, he's retired. Why wouldn't the Browns bring him back? I mean, Jameis Winston is very talented, and I'm sure a lot younger than Flacco. But boy, oh boy, did Flacco step up. I mean, he's the type of backup that you would want to have. You know what I mean? But why did they let him go, and why did he not retire, I wonder? And what do they think about that in Cleveland?
There hasn't been a ton of buzz about it.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, it is surprising to me that they didn't look to bring him back, because Joe Flacco was very beloved. Like I
Yeah.
know he had a garbage playoff game and it created a sour taste on the season in the end. But like he became like kind of like Cleveland's darling in that sense. And like,
Yeah.
and I know, and I mean, he won comeback player of the year. Um, so I totally get him going to another spot, backing up Anthony Richardson, who got hurt twice in his rookie year. So there's still a chance that he could play.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I get Joe Flacco not retiring. I don't fully understand the Browns not bringing Flacco back unless they think that they got exactly what they would have gotten out of him.
Yeah.
I think Jameis Winston makes sense because stylistically he's very similar to Deshaun Watson. So in case there is an injury, I mean, 50 quarterbacks started last year. So like it's very possible you see an injury. So just in case like Deshaun Watson gets banged up, you're going to have kind of similar scheming. So it's not going to throw everyone else off.
That makes I totally agree. That makes a lot of sense. And Winston, if he had to start 5 games next year, I think he'd win 4. I think, he's a very capable, quarterback who I think one day reminds me of Geno Smith, his journey, that maybe Winston will have that same type of journey that one day he'll land on a team where, he starts. Because I think that he definitely is talented enough to do it. Um, I want to come back to the Giants for a second. I had texted you Monday night, late Monday night, and said, "Hey, your day ended well," and you wasn't sure what I was talking about. You're like, "Oh, what happened? Did we sign Blake Snell?" But you got Burns, the guy from Carolina, who a lot of folks I don't think are aware of how good he is because Carolina just was so bad the last couple of years actually, and you don't see Carolina on Monday night or Sunday night football. So a lot of people don't realize how good he is, but he's good. I thought that was a huge pickup for the Giants.
Oh, I totally agree. Because now you have him with Thibodeau on that front four.
Yeah,
I mean, their defense is going to be pretty good next year.
yeah, yeah,
Now, biggest thing though is you can't overwork the defense because then they'll start giving up
yeah,
more. But
yeah.
I did love the move, and I don't know what the Panthers are doing because they had an offer for Burns last year where I think they got 2 first-round picks. And the Giants kind of fleeced them. I think a second and a fifth or something like that. So
That had to be a cost-cutting thing, I think, for Carolina. Why would they get rid of their best defensive player? You know what I mean? And you're right, they didn't get like a couple of first-round picks, like they would have. That had to be they knew that they'd have to pay him at some point. Um, I want to go around the league real quick and Kirk Cousins to the Falcons. What were your thoughts there? I mean, he got a lot of money and more years than I thought that any team would give him because he's up there in age. But Cousins wins wherever he goes. What do you think about that and how do you think he'll fit in with Atlanta?
yeah, 4 years for a guy that's well over 35 and
Yeah,
coming off a torn Achilles is surprising.
I was
But fun
surprised.
fact, do you know that Kirk Cousins has made $411 million as an NFL quarterback?
He just seems to come up on free agency at the right time. You know what I mean? He really
Right?
does. Where desperate teams like pay him. I did not know
Yeah.
it was that high, but that's crazy. But if you watch that documentary that you and I watch, I like that he's getting paid a lot of money. He's just a great all around guy.
Yeah, and I think that's what Atlanta needs. They've had a little bit of instability since Matt Ryan has left. Having like an older veteran quarterback, yes, his ceiling is a lot lower than say a Justin Fields or taking a risk on like a Desmond Ritter or someone like that. But you know what you're gonna get. You're gonna get like B plus quarterbacking, and I mean it's good enough to get you to the playoffs, especially in a division where he's probably now the best quarterback in that division. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
maybe Baker, like
yeah, yeah,
so I think that that really helps. And I think they needed that reset. And hopefully some of the other guys, because like Kyle Pitts has been like the fantasy pit hole for people. Like,
yeah.
oh, he's gonna be really good, and then he does nothing. Same with Bijan Robinson. So maybe like a guy like Kirk Cousins can kind of re-energize them and really take that franchise to the next level.
Oh, I think so. I really do. I think so. Um, the Calvin Ridley signing I thought was pretty big. Um, but you want to know what I think the best signing was? And ironically enough, they lost a big piece of their offensive line for us, the Ravens, to the Jets. And the Jets need that. The Jets have more work to do on that offensive line, but that was a big first step. But the Ravens signing Derrick Henry, I think if Derrick Henry is just a little bit healthy and he gives them 2 years of not even, I mean, Derrick Henry this past year still had over 1,000 yards, but let's just say Derrick Henry of 2 years ago, 3 years. I mean, that just gives Jackson that weapon that I think could get them finally over the top. What that to me was the best move.
It's hard to argue that.
Yeah.
Because also Baltimore relies so much on the run game with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
But imagine a run pass option with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. Like, how are you going to stop that?
Yeah.
I think also kind of a low key move that was pretty good was the Chiefs. They signed last night Hollywood Brown, and they don't need like a top fledged receiver. I mean, they won the Super Bowl with a bunch of randos and Kadarius Toney.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Your
but
guy. Yeah.
But yeah, like I don't know. I think the Chiefs are like, as long as we sign back our guys, get a couple of depth pieces, and we're gonna go for the first three-peat in NFL history. So I don't know.
There's never been a team that won 3 in a row. I guess I should know that. Wow.
Nah.
Yeah. Well, I know the Patriots didn't. But I don't want to give away episode 4. I don't think I had anything else on free agency. Those were, to me, that Derrick Henry move was the top one. I thought the Jets, they didn't make a big splash. I didn't think they needed to. It's the offensive line that they really, really need to shore up. The Jets have good receivers. The Jets have a very good running back. Their secondary's fine. Their linebackers and their defense is fine. Of course, you're going to add a piece or two through the draft, but it's the offensive line was their weak link. And if Aaron Rodgers, is not running for VP with Robert Kennedy Jr., I mean, that was just a bizarre story. I don't even know what to say about that. This Patriot thing, I don't want to give it away. I'll just say little bits and pieces of it. So this is not really a spoiler alert. First of all, I think I mentioned this last week. I think I'm on episode 6 now. But I mentioned this last week that it's bringing back names that I had forgotten, and the Lawyer Malloys, Troy Brown. I mean, they had so many guys that they plugged in and out. Junior Seau, for a year. Corey Dillon, Lawrence Maroney. It's bringing back so many. Dante Stallworth, all these names. Teddy Bruce, Mike Vrabel, Willie McGinnis. You just line them up. I mean, they were just quite the team. But the whole Tom Brady story and Drew Bledsoe is where it really starts. And really, I guess I'll say this doesn't give away anything, because there is an episode totally dedicated to Spygate. And it really gave me quite the understanding why Belichick just despises Eric Mangini, because it was absolutely Eric Mangini who spilled the beans, and it was like an unwritten code that they were doing this. But you knew that these coaches were going to get hired other places, Romeo Crennel, Josh McDaniel, but none of them said anything when they went anywhere else except Eric Mangini. And it's a fascinating how that story unfolds. But you're going to see Bill Belichick before and after, because Belichick was a very chatty, media-friendly guy in those first few years. When Spygate hit, and then there's a whole episode, I want to say it's episode 5, or maybe it's a whole episode devoted to the whole Aaron Hernandez thing. Because after they lost to the Giants that second time, they're like, we got to retool. Or when they didn't get to the Super Bowl after their perfect season and Matt Castle comes in, they had to retool, and they draft both Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. And that episode is riveting and fascinating, Kenny. Even though, I think you and I watched the whole docuseries on Aaron Hernandez. This one episode really gives you the Patriots' perspective from Robert Kraft, who was like a father to him, to Belichick, how Belichick really kept turning a blind eye to him just being just this nutty guy in practice. And Belichick's practices, you'll see this, is I'm not giving anything away, were brutal. He was hard on the team, but you see why we got to over the last 8, 9 years of these one-word answers from Belichick. We're moving on. We're moving forward. Not going to talk about that. But you clearly see the stuff that jaded him. But in between is episode 4, and you see the enormous chip on the Patriots' shoulders. And that's all I'll say. You have to watch that. I'm going to reach out to our buddy Dave Ruff and see if he's watched it and if he'd like to come on from a New England perspective. It's a fascinating. I highly, highly recommend it. Now, I will recommend this because we're on the positive tip and we're both pastors. There's some language in it. It's really surprising to hear Tom Brady use the F word so much, but he's using it during when they're interviewing him. And that's the good part, because Belichick is interviewed during this, Kraft, Brady, and then there's all these players that we have forgot, Deion Branch, who we forgot about too. It's fascinating. So you have to watch it. But start with episode 4 so you can feel a little bit better. So speaking of feeling a little bit better, I'm going to shut up. Give us an update on the Yankees and Garrett Cole, and why the heck do they not have Mike Lorenzen or Mike Clevenger or Jordan Montgomery? Any one of these guys that's not named, Blake Snell, why aren't they in camp? I don't get it. Why haven't the Yankees just taken out the paycheck? I think it's because of the sales tax. But what does this mean for the Yankees with Garrett Cole being out? Let's just say 2 months.
Yeah, so Monday hit like a rock. Because also I'll start with the Judge aspect of it, because that's also, I don't know, I'll just start with this. The Yankees are weird with injuries, and sometimes it's really annoying so let's rewind. Sunday was like your normal, a lot of the starters playing, like, oh, this could be an actual everyday lineup that I see. All the other starters got at least 3 or 4 at-bats. Judge, in his second at-bat, kind of had a weird little wince and then left the game afterwards. And then, so originally they were like, oh, well, the original plan was for Judge to only go 2 at-bats. And then he's not in the game the following day, and Aaron Boone says, yeah, he's got a little bit of a mid-spring beat-up. He'll be back on Wednesday. And then the following day, they're like, oh, yeah, Judge had an MRI on his abs. He's fine, but he's not going to play again until Saturday. Like, just tell us we're a little concerned. We just want to be extra cautious, and he'll be back in a few days. Like, you don't have to lie about it. But luckily it looks like Judge is going to be fine. MRI, because especially you're worried when a wincing and midsection, you worry about oblique, because obliques can last forever.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like he's fine.
Okay.
Cole was a very interesting set of circumstances. I think first, kudos to Garrett Cole for knowing his body and realizing when something kind of feels a little bit off. Because I feel like there are some people that would just kind of shrug it off, be like, whatever, maybe I'm just a little sore because I'm getting a little older, whatever. But he knew that something was slightly off, so he wanted to make sure that everything was good. Because some other guys, oh, well, I'm a little, because Cole said from after a couple of outings, his elbow was feeling like he had thrown 100 pitches, and obviously he didn't. So just something to kind of look out, got an MRI and everything. So MRI comes back, they don't detect a tear, but they're like, well, let's check with another guy, another specialist out in LA. So he goes out last night. Everything still comes back clean. They are not recommending Tommy John. There's no tear in the UCL, which is the absolute best news that the Yankees could hear.
Yeah.
So it looks like the recommendation is a little bit of rest, some different type of techniques to make sure that the elbow's fine, and they expect him to be back in the rotation within 10 to 12 weeks. So we're probably looking at a timeline of around late May, early June.
Okay.
Most people that had Tommy John at around this time didn't return back until August or September
Yeah.
of the following season.
Yeah.
So like if Garrett Cole was going to get hurt or need Tommy John, he would have been gone for 2 years.
Yeah.
And luckily we're not going to see that.
Yeah.
So as far as the replacements go, I have no idea why the Yankees haven't hit up anybody. There's been a little rumblings about Michael Lorenzen, possibly some other guys in there, but like to me, you still should go after a Snell. You have a defending Cy Young Award winner available.
I'm
He
just
could be.
I'm really puzzled. Not just the Yankees not signing Snell. What are we, like a week and change? Aren't there like regular season games coming up this week?
The season starts Wednesday.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just stunned that he's not signed yet. But now there's a couple of needs, right? The Mets had a need and Yankees had a need. How about Noah Syndergaard? Low risk, right? Bring him in maybe and just see what he can do.
Yeah, I mean, and we could go in the cliche Trevor Bauer, but I don't think that's happening either.
Was it
But
you
like,
that told me that him and I didn't realize this. I think it was you that told me, or did I read it? That him and Cole were teammates at UCLA and they hate each other and they haven't like smoothed it over either. They still don't like each other.
yeah, Bauer has said that there isn't a problem, but
Right.
also Cole has never said that there's not a problem.
Right.
So I would trust Garrett Cole there, not the free agent looking for a job.
Yeah, you would think that they've moved on though. That's a long time ago, right? From
Yeah.
when they were in college. I mean, come on. But anyway, go ahead.
But so the timeline, so Cole isn't going to be missing most of the season, which is excellent.
Yes.
However, the Yankees rotation right now is Carlos Rodon, Marcus Stroman, Clark Schmidt, Nestor Cortez, and I have no idea who else.
Yeah.
Probably Cody Poteet. That's a very household name, right?
Yeah.
So, and with that, also, we have no idea who's starting opening day. Marcus Stroman wants to stay on his schedule, so he's declined to do it. They said that they're not going to put Rodon in on opening day, which is probably best for him. He gets lit up by the Astros. Yankee fans are going to shred him, especially opening day.
Right.
My guess is they're going opener, which would be really awkward, but it's fine.
You start off with a bullpen game. I guess you can carry a couple of extra pitchers, right? And then make a move right after. But that, I mean, taxing your bullpen on game one like that, I don't know, man.
But also, like, it's Thursday, and then they don't play again until Saturday.
Oh, that's right. You have that day in between. Yeah, yeah.
Let me double check that because they might not.
Yeah, baseball does that in case it's a rain out. Or in case the game is full. Or in Yankees' case, a couple of times it snowed.
Yeah. But they need and I think the reason why they haven't signed Snell yet is because of the luxury tax. Because if they sign him for a $35 million 1-year deal against the tax, it's like 78 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I get that, but also this Yankee team has 8 pending free agents, including Juan Soto. This is kind of a all-in type of year.
Yeah.
And to me, that means you eat the extra money this year and then try to figure it out moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
I sort of understand them not because of that tax. I sort of understand them not going after the top 2 guys. I don't understand how they haven't brought in the next tier guys yet. Lorenzen, Clevenger. I do understand Bauer because they wouldn't do that to Cole. Cole's their ace, their star, and especially while he's out. And if they've asked Cole and he said, "Yeah, man, don't bring this guy in," they're not going to bring him in.
Yeah.
But even a Syndergaard, I'm sure there's some names that we've forgotten that are out there that I don't understand why the Yankees haven't done that. Because with the Mets, I understand why they didn't replace Senga because they do have a couple of guys coming up, they have a couple of extra starters, right? And one being Tyler McGill, who's done extremely well in spring training. One being Jose Buto, another odd name, but he pitched well when he came up last year. And they also have Joey Lucchesi, who is at least a big league pitcher. So I think that the Mets at least have some guys that fill in until Senga gets back. But Senga means this as much to the Mets as Cole means to the Yankees, especially, you're starting without, Max, without, DeGrom, without Verlander. You don't have that big starter in the beginning. So um let's expand this conversation a little bit because you put in perspective to me this week about the New York injuries here. I mean, we just talked about Senga and and obviously Cole, but we go back to last year or the year before, DeGrom being out most of the year. Then last year, Scherzer couldn't stay healthy. Neither could Verlander, and by the time they both kind of got healthy, they were traded. And the Mets were far out of it. Um, and then we've got Aaron Rodgers on the first series going down, season-ending injury. We've seen what
Future
is
vice president.
yeah, it's just devastated our Knicks. And thank goodness the Knicks have kind of held on, and hopefully now, they can start to move forward. But I mean, without Randall and Anobi, and there was even a point where Brunson didn't even start, and Mitchell Robinson has been down for most of the year. Even Hartenstein was out for a few games. Um, it seems like every New York team just has these. Who am I missing? The Giants, Daniel Jones, when he went down, he brought in Tommy Cutlets and and he did well after that first game. First game, they wouldn't let him throw a pass. I'm like, well, you gotta be kidding me. He's a professional backup. He can't throw a pass. Um, it's just been one injury after the other in New York. And I mean, so what do you think?
Yeah, well, I'll add a couple other ones here. Aaron Judge and the
Oh,
wall and with the Dodgers, like
yeah. He was
injured
out
his
a lot
toe.
longer than they thought he'd be out, remember? I mean, he was out
Yeah,
a long time.
there's another Yankee weird injury thing. Oh, he's only gonna miss a couple games and he misses 2 months.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but also another one, and this was announced last week anyway. Ben Simmons. We kind of forget that he plays in New York because he's barely played.
I feel so bad for him, but wow. Yeah.
Um,
Forgot about him.
and like I think what kills me the most, and I think you would probably agree with this now, the Giants um with Daniel Jones, like they probably weren't Super Bowl aspirations, but the Jets definitely were. Like
Yeah.
that's why you get Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
The Mets last year, they're coming off a 101 win season. And you also bring in Justin Verlander. Like their goal was to make it to the World Series. The Yankees last year and the Yankees this year. Like World Series aspirations. The Knicks, like, yes, they probably weren't looking NBA finals, but this team was heading in that direction. Like, oh, could they make a run to the Eastern Conference Finals? Could
Yeah.
they maybe upset a Celtics or a Bucks in there?
Yeah.
But like it seems like every single team that has had that type of hope has gotten injured and like hit with the injury bug hard. And like you don't see it with other teams. Like the Atlanta Braves. Acuna was healthy the entire year. Olsen, like all of those guys have stayed healthy. I mean, Acuna had his one injury, but that's kind of it. The
Yeah.
Astros, like you never saw Carlos Correa out for the year or Jose
Yeah.
Altuve. Like, I mean, he's been banged up, but
Yeah.
um, or I don't know, or the Chiefs. Like the
Yeah.
Chiefs have been super healthy. The Celtics, like when was the last time you said, oh, Jason Tatum has been out for the year, Jaylen Brown?
Yeah.
But it seems like every single New York team, like, is it the water? Like, what's the deal?
I don't know. And you know, a lot of the big players, I don't know if they avoid the injury and they play just as hard. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. Has LeBron James ever really had like a season-ending injury? Maybe his first year with the Lakers. He just couldn't get past, I think, a hamstring or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
I think he tore his groin or something like that. So he
right.
missed, but I think he came back though. I don't think he was
Yeah.
done.
No, he didn't. Yeah, he didn't miss a whole year. Mahomes. I, I mean, he plays pretty much every week. I mean, you think about the top tier stars. You've seen Steph Curry get banged up here and there, but you never see, oh, he's out for the year. Um, I I don't know what it is. you hate to think some of these franchises are jinxed. I mean, the Jets haven't been to the Super Bowl since 1969, and now they have the longest playoff streak, right? I think what is it now, 14 years, 13 years?
2010, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, it it's puzzling. It really is. For a while, the Mets, I remember they fired their whole training staff. They got new training staff in, and I don't even know if like it's the training staff or do you bring someone back too soon? I don't get it. I mean, Julius Randle, I don't want to say it was a freak injury, but he plays hard like that all the time. And it wasn't unusual to see him fall down like that. But yet he fell down and he hit his shoulder in just the right spot or wrong spot, whatever you want to call it. Um, and Anunoby, he's going really well, but his elbow, apparently there wasn't one thing that messed up his elbow. Apparently it was like that. You would think the Knicks, I'm glad they got him, but you would think they would have spotted that in physical when they take the physical after the trade. But see, the Knicks, here's the thing, and we'll segue to the NBA. They would have never made that Detroit trade had they not had these championship aspirations. And I'm not saying the Detroit trade was a bad one. It's just that neither one of these guys have really done much. I think Bogey has had a couple of decent games, and Alec Burks looks like he's coming along, but I've been surprised how out of place that they've looked, on there. The Knicks wouldn't have made that trade had they not thinking, okay, these are a couple of pieces for at least for us to make a run to the conference finals.
Yeah. And really and I agree, like they wouldn't have just made, like you don't make that type of move unless you have your sights further than just, oh yeah, let's just make the playoffs.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. The injuries, I don't even know what to say anymore. It's not surprising. Tom Brady, again, watching the documentary, he had that one bad injury. He got injured in the AFC Championship game the first year that in that era they went to the Super Bowl. But Drew Bledsoe came in and saved the day. But then he got injured in the first game against the Chiefs, and he was out for the year. He tried actually to come back, which we didn't know about, and he got this really bad infection, which we didn't know about, because he tried to push himself too hard after the surgery, and then he was out for the year. But outside of those, I mean, Brady played every game, man. I mean, he always played. Hey, let's jump to the NBA, and I have this interesting thing for you. When I looked at the standings this morning, if I told you at the beginning of the season that this would be right now, if the season was to end now, the West play-in series would be Phoenix, Dallas, the Lakers, Golden State.
That'd be fun.
Those would be the four teams in the play-in. Phoenix, every time they look like they got it together, they take a couple of steps back. They've had a couple of bad losses. I don't know what's wrong with Dallas. They don't seem to be consistent at all this year. I think the Lakers are where they should be based on their talent. I just don't think outside of LeBron and Anthony Davis that they've got good, very good players, but not like that third, I'm going to take that next step, thing. Like Dinwiddie made a great play to win the game the other night. D'Angelo Russell has been really good, but they've got a bunch of really good players. So I could see them making a little bit of run if they stay healthy. I think you've been right about the Warriors all along here. They're 3 games over 500. So the Pelicans have made quite the move in the West now. So you give me your overall assessment here of the West, and we can talk a little bit about the Knicks.
Yeah, well, it's definitely one of those. This is not how we would have written it out, because also still OKC is the top seed, which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Coach of the year right there, if you ask me.
Yeah.
I think the team to be like keeping your hardcore eye on would be the Clippers. Because also the way the bracket would fall, you could be looking at a second round matchup of like, I don't know, maybe Phoenix, or if the Lakers would have to be. Yeah, it could be the Lakers. Like any of those, like Lakers Clippers, we've been wanting that matchup since 2020. when Kawhi first got there.
Yeah.
But like it seems like they might be the team where all of the pieces kind of fall in place. And there's a lot of guys too on that team. I think especially James Harden. Kawhi doesn't really have a ton to prove. I think Kawhi is going to be easy. Like all four of those guys, Kawhi, Paul, well, maybe Paul George, Kawhi, Russ, and Harden, they're all probably going to be Hall of Famers. But a lot of them really haven't really done it on the big stage, and they could have everything fall in place for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Minnesota's going to be interesting to see how far they fall without Karl Anthony Towns for a few more weeks, but I think they'll still be fine. But yeah, it's Sacramento and New Orleans, two teams that like you kind of forgot about a little bit.
Yeah.
But Zion fully healthy and not making a lot of waves.
They're going to be dangerous.
CJ McCollum, they're going to be dangerous. They're like, if I'm looking at teams I don't want to play, you don't want to play the Lakers because you never know what you're getting from LeBron and Anthony Davis. But also, I don't want to play New Orleans.
No.
Zion, when healthy, can be very, very dangerous.
Yeah. Those you called it on two teams that folks aren't talking about as much. I think OKC is amazing. Again, I think it's just a playoff experience in the NBA that may hold them back. And there in the mix is Denver. Denver handily goes into Miami the other night in the second rematch from last year's finals and handily beats the Heat. So they look like they're really rounding into playoff form. They're going to be a handful to beat, but you're right, man. The Clippers, oh my gosh, they've come together really, really nicely. And we didn't think that. When the Harden trade was made, we're like, oh, here we go. This is gonna be another flop super team. Remember, they came out of the gate and I think they lost 5 or 6 in a row. And they've just been on a tear ever since. So they're gonna be interesting. So what's your expectation now with the Knicks? Let's just say in another week we get Julius Randle back. Anunoby had some issues with his elbow last night, but he says he's playing against Sacramento. He says just soreness, which is expected. What's a realistic expectation for the Knicks right now, you think?
Well, I'm looking at the bracket here. So if the playoffs were to start, another note too with the East, the play-in between the 76ers and the Heat. I mean, one will probably play the Celtics and the other will probably play the Bucks in the end. And also would not want to play either of those teams. But
no.
So right now the Knicks would be playing Orlando in the first round. And they would have home court. Like looking at the standings, that's probably where they land. There's a chance that you could see them facing Indiana, which I don't know, maybe it's the 90s PTSD, but I just don't want to face Indiana. Also, I think of the 2013 team, but regardless, like I think right now the realistic expectation is you got to win at least a playoff round. Depending on where you end up as far as seeding goes, can kind of dictate whether or not they can get another round in. Because beating the Celtics would be really hard.
Yeah.
But also, I think if you take a game at home or take a game on the road against the Celtics, and like let's say you beat them game 2, you take a 3-1 lead on them, things can kind of start getting in their heads. Because I feel like the Celtics, especially, they're bad in the fourth quarter. And they don't really still have that leader that can calm them down when things kind of go down in the tubes. Which I think is part of the reason why they struggle in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
But I think right now, like minimum, you got to make it past the first round. Like if you lose to either Orlando, Indiana, any of those guys there.
Yeah.
But I think they still have the potential to make the Eastern Conference Finals. Okay. I think that's definitely still within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm hoping this is a fun spring at Madison Square Garden, between the Knicks and the Rangers. I hope they both make deep runs here and it will be a throwback to the 90s. Right here upon us is Sunday is Selection Sunday. And so the real meat of the year starts, right? Be a fun 2.5 weeks or so with the tournament coming up. I mean, Purdue, they look unbeatable, but they lost in the first round last year, which is why Zach Edey came back. Houston looks great, Tennessee, UConn. But there'll be all these dark horse teams, man, and here in New York, it's been a big story with St. John's. They've gone on quite the run. And so they're hoping that they get in because they didn't have a great regular season with Rick Pitino. You never know, So is there? I mean, we'll talk about this obviously next week. But any teams off the top of your head you're liking?
I haven't followed it close enough to say.
Yeah,
I mean, I know
yeah,
Purdue with Edie, that'll definitely like add some juice, but I
yeah,
haven't really watched it enough.
yeah. Okay, yeah. You gotta get caught up here. We gotta watch some stuff this weekend. These conference tournament finals and everything like that. Um, hey, you ready to go to some inspiration?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I got something for you. And I don't know how I missed this. We're doing a study with David Jeremiah, and it's called "The God That You May Not Know." And he talked about this with Tim Tebow the other night. Now, Tim Tebow is someone I continue to follow. I love the work he's doing, particularly with human trafficking right now. Um, he's not chasing, he's not playing outfield for the Mets anymore, Mets of farm teams. And, I don't know if he's still a commentator. I'm guessing he still comes on ESPN, maybe college football season. He was for a while with Stephen A, but I haven't seen him on that in a while. I don't get to watch that much anyway. But um, so the when he started wearing John 3:16 on his eye black. Um, and then he had that one playoff win, the Broncos over the Steelers, heavily favored Steelers that year. And he had John 3:16 on his eye black. Did you know this? That he passed for 316 yards, that the average per catch was 31.6 yards per catch. Do you know that he
Wow.
rushed his average rushing that night was 3.16 yards per rush? Do you know that 31.6 million people watched that game? It was a Saturday night wild card round playoff game. It was exactly 3 years to that day from the time that he first put on John 3:16 when he was with Florida. Do you know that Denver Broncos, their time of possession was exactly 31.6 minutes that night? And here was the big thing, which is why that's never a bad thing, right? That over 90 million people just in that during the game that Saturday night searched on Google what John 3:16 was. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I did not. I don't know how I missed all that because it's been several years, right? I think that game was in 2009, somewhere around there. So I don't know how I missed all those coincidences, but was it a coincidence? I think God sowed something there. And of those 90 million people that searched, there's no way that you're going to tell me that not at least one soul came to the Lord that night, that looked up that scripture and said, oh my gosh, let me read the whole thing, all of John 3, instead of just the one verse or just kept reading, when they found that. So, his only begotten son, it's great this time of year, especially to kind of bring that back up. I don't know how I missed that over all these years, but what an amazing coincidence, or was it? Anyway, that's my inspiration today.
Well, that's good. Let's look at here. There's minor news that just popped in. Mike Vrabel is going to be a coach and personnel consultant with the Browns.
Oh
So
wow. Okay.
he has a job now again, but
I was
not a
stunned
head coach.
that he didn't get a head coaching job. Man, I just the fact that he took that means that he wanted to coach still. Nobody called him. That's really that was surprising for me.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, so my inspiration this week comes from a very ominous time in our world. March 12th, 2020. So 4 years ago this week
Oh God.
was the day that all sports stopped.
Yes.
Where you saw MLB, NHL, NBA, and of course March Madness all either postponing or canceling their seasons. So I had stumbled upon this a couple weeks ago because like we always look at the big picture when it comes to sports. You have like, because I mean you look 2020, the NFL draft class was weird. Um, like you have Trevor Lawrence as the quarterback there. I mean he's been okay. Zach Wilson stud. Trey Lance, Mac Jones now with a different team. So like you can kind of see a little bit of that there. Some of the guys that were supposed to be big major league prospects that lost time, I think it's taken them a while to recover. I think one that's kind of lost in there, actually, ironically started a playoff game. Davy Garcia with the Yankees, he's never been the same.
Yeah.
But regardless, I think one of the things that gets lost is how much it affected younger people. And not just in the school aspect, because I still see the effects of that with some of our kids at the Learning Center. But you think of all the kids that didn't have an in-person graduation, all the kids that couldn't really have prom. But one that was really affected was sports. Yes, a lot of high school athletes aren't going to the professional level. Some aren't even going to college. But high school sports could be a really big sense of camaraderie. And there was this, obviously baseball was one of the big sports affected by it. And one of the teams, their seniors never got to have their senior day. So what they decided to do is they were renovating. This is a school in Colorado, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things they wanted to do for their high school seniors as they were renovating their field, every single high school senior signed a baseball and they buried the baseball underneath home plate. So as every single run is scored in the history of that school moving forward, those high school seniors have their part of it because they're right there.
Wow.
And then they also have a plaque with all of their names on it to say like the high school senior class of 2020, like good luck or something. They have something better, but like, it just got me really thinking about that and how that's got to be really hard. And I mean, we still, like I said, we still see the effects of it today, and we see it especially with the smaller schools. One of our local schools is closing its doors at the end of the school year, and it's a big, like, athlete type of school. So a lot of those people, like a lot of the friendships you lose. So reach out to the young people. It's I can't imagine what it must have been like to go through going to school during COVID. So.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought all that up. That's great. And we've kind of forgotten that, we've kind of forgotten a lot of it. It's some days it seems like it was a long time ago. Some days it seems like it was like just like yesterday. I can remember coming home from what turned out to be my last business trip. I didn't know it at the time. And I remember turning on the TV. I'd come from up there in New England, and I remember turning on the TV, and I want to say it was the Hawks and the Jazz. A late game was on, and they had, Adam Silver had already announced that the NBA season was shutting down, but they were still playing. That was the only game that they were still playing, and but fans are getting this information on their phones, and there's just this buzz, and the players had no idea, about it. Just an ominous time, but I'm glad you brought that up for the kids who were probably the most impacted on this. See, as adults, we got to stay in, take time off, but the kids didn't want to do that, especially kids that wanted to play, their sports. So it's a good time to check back in with them, even though it's 4 years later, and let them really talk about how they felt, and how they feel now about that. So I love that story. They buried all the baseballs underneath home plate. That's amazing. That's an amazing.
Yeah, that's so much fun.
Yeah. All right, but lots to talk about next week. March Madness coming up. Get ready to do our baseball preview. If not doing it, Negro Leagues will pick back up. The Dynasty, Patriots, you got to watch some, especially episode 4, so we can talk about it. But right now, take us home, man.
All right, this is Kenny Squared Ed.
Kenny.
With Sports on the Positive Tip. We'll see you guys next week.
Absolutely. Great show. Good job, Kenny.